In the dazzling world of Chinese entertainment, where fame can rise and fall like the flicker of neon lights across a sleepless city, two names continue to echo through every fan's heart: Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo. They're not just stars, they're storms, unstoppable forces that change the landscape of modern Chinese pop culture. But before the lights, the fame, and the millions of adoring fans, there were shadows, moments of doubt, loneliness, and quiet resilience that shaped them into who they are today. This is the story of their struggles, their turning points, and the breathtaking moments that made them legends. The story begins long before the Untamed ever lit up screens around the world. It starts with two boys, one with a dream buried beneath practicality, and another whose fire burned too brightly to ever stay hidden. Xiao Zhan, born in Chongqing, wasn't supposed to be a superstar. He was the boy next door, polite, quiet, and impossibly hardworking. His life once revolved around design, not music, not acting, but the careful perfection of art layouts and color palettes. As a student at the Modern International Art Design Academy, he excelled in his craft, and upon graduation, he became a graphic designer. The world saw a creative young man with a steady job and a sensible future. But somewhere deep inside, Xiao Zhan carried a spark he couldn't explain, a silent pull toward the stage, a place where he could tell stories not with sketches, but with his voice and emotions. He used to stay up late, earphones in, watching performance videos, his heart thumping as he imagined himself standing beneath the same blinding lights. But he'd quickly close his laptop, shake the thought away, and remind himself, dreams like that aren't for people like me. Until one day, fate decided otherwise. In 2015, when Xiao Zhan's friends convinced him to audition for the survival show, X-Fire, he almost refused. It wasn't his world. He wasn't trained, he wasn't polished, and he wasn't young enough compared to the fresh-faced trainees around him. But something in him whispered, what if? So he went. And in that single decision, nervous, trembling, unsure, the course of his life changed forever. But success didn't come wrapped in applause. When Xiao Zhan joined X9, the boy group formed from the show's finalists, the spotlight felt both thrilling and terrifying. He was older than most of his bandmates and had to train twice as hard to catch up. While others were already seasoned dancers and singers, he was a designer-turned-performer, fumbling through choreographies and pitch exercises that left him breathless. There were days he'd stay in the practice room long after the others left, repeating the same moves until his legs gave out. Days when his voice cracked during vocal training, and the sting of failure felt unbearable. He didn't tell anyone how close he came to giving up. But every time he looked at his reflection in the studio mirror, drenched in sweat, he'd whisper to himself, "You started late, but you won't finish last." Meanwhile, far away in Luoyang, Wang Yibo was living a very different storm. Wang Yibo was a firecracker, fast, fearless, and untamed. From a young age, he was drawn to rhythm and speed, whether it was the sharp movement of dance or the roar of a motorcycle engine. When other kids played safely, Yibo was the one climbing higher, running faster, pushing boundaries that scared even adults. At just 13, he auditioned for Yuehua Entertainment and got accepted as a trainee, a grueling path that demanded everything from him. He left home for Korea to train under the most intense conditions, facing a world where every mistake could mean being cut from the lineup. There were nights when Yibo would fall asleep on the studio floor, utterly drained. Nights when homesickness crept in like a quiet ache. The trainers were strict, sometimes ruthless. He wasn't the best singer, nor the strongest dancer at first. But his determination? Unbreakable. Every criticism became fuel. Every doubt made him sharper. Then, in 2014, he debuted as a member of UNIQ, a Chinese-South Korean boy band that aimed to conquer both markets. At first, it seemed like the dream was finally within reach: the music videos, the fans, the tours. But reality struck hard when the group's activities were affected by international tensions and limited promotions. One moment they were rising stars, the next silence. For a young Wang Yibo, it felt like standing on a stage where the lights suddenly went out. He'd trained half his life for this, and yet, fame remained just out of reach. But quitting was never in his dictionary. Instead, he turned to his other passions: dance battles, variety shows, acting, even motorcycle racing. He began building his reputation not through noise, but through skill. The boy who once feared being forgotten became the man who could do everything. And then, destiny wrote a scene that neither of them could have imagined, a project that would bring their worlds crashing together. When casting began for the fantasy series The Untamed, no one knew that this low-budget adaptation of a web novel would become a global phenomenon. Xiao Zhan was offered the role of Wei Wuxian, the charismatic yet tragic hero, while Wang Yibo was cast as Lan Wangji, the stoic and noble cultivator. At first glance, they were opposites in every sense. Xiao Zhan was warm, expressive, and intuitive. Wang Yibo was cool, disciplined, and reserved. Their personalities clashed on set in subtle, unspoken ways, Xiao Zhan's laughter filling the air between takes while Yibo stayed focused, eyes trained on the script. But something magical happened once the cameras rolled. The contrast that seemed like oil and water off-screen became lightning in a bottle on-screen. Xiao Zhan's emotional depth met Yibo's quiet intensity, and suddenly, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji weren't just characters. They were legends brought to life. The chemistry was undeniable, the performances hauntingly real. As the show aired, fans around the world found themselves captivated not only by the story, but by the genuine connection between the two leads. What no one saw behind the camera, though, was how much of themselves they poured into every scene. For Xiao Zhan, it was another test of endurance. The filming was grueling, often done in scorching heat or bone-chilling cold, with little rest. His costume was heavy, the makeup endless, and the emotional toll immense. But he never complained. Every scene was a chance to prove that he wasn't just a designer who stumbled into acting. He was an actor, a real one. For Yibo, the role of Lan Wangji demanded restraint, an art form of silence and stillness. It wasn't just about saying lines, but conveying entire emotions with a single glance. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done, yet he nailed it with precision. When the series finally aired in 2019, the world shifted. The Untamed exploded beyond imagination. Millions watched, cried, and fell in love. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo became overnight sensations, faces plastered across billboards, their names shouted by fans from Beijing to Bangkok, from Seoul to San Francisco. But fame, as always, comes with a price. For Xiao Zhan, the adoration turned into scrutiny. Every move, Picture this, a cramped apartment in Chongqing, the glow of a computer screen casting soft light across a sketchbook. A young Xiao Zhan leans forward, pencil in hand, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. The city hums outside his window, cars rushing by, rain tapping against glass, but his world is still. He's lost in a design project that's due the next morning. He was good at what he did, meticulous, disciplined, the kind of student and employee everyone admired. But behind every clean line he drew, behind every poster he perfected, was a whisper, a voice that told him, "You're meant for more than this." Sometimes, after work, he'd sneak into a small karaoke room with friends. The neon lights would flicker as he sang softly into the microphone, hesitant at first, then losing himself in the melody. For a few fleeting minutes, he wasn't Xiao Zhan the designer. He was Xiao Zhan the dreamer. But dreams are dangerous things when the world expects you to be realistic. Then came that one evening, the one that would change everything. His college friends, half joking, urged him to audition for the show X-Fire. He laughed it off. He was 24, too old to start as a trainee, too untrained, too ordinary. But their insistence lingered. He went home, looked in the mirror, and thought, why not? And so, with trembling hands, he submitted the audition form. When the acceptance email came, he stared at it in disbelief. It felt unreal, like being invited to a world he had no map for. But that's the thing about fate. It never waits for you to be ready. Training was brutal. The first day, he stood among a sea of younger, sharper, more confident trainees. The dance instructor barked out counts, the music blared, and his body struggled to follow. He stumbled, missed beats, and for a second, his confidence cracked. That night, after everyone left, he stayed. Alone in the mirrored studio, he practiced until dawn. His knees ached, his shirt clung to him with sweat, but in the reflection staring back, he saw something new, a fighter. There's an image fans rarely see. Xiao Zhan sitting against the studio wall, the faint blue dawn creeping through the window, whispering to himself, "I can do this. I have to do this." Days turned to months. And slowly, his voice grew stronger, his movements sharper. He began to stand out, not because he was the best, but because he never stopped trying. The designer who once built worlds with color was now building himself, one step, one note, one sleepless night at a time. Meanwhile, in another city miles away, another boy was already living in motion. Wang Yibo wasn't the type to sit still. His mother used to joke that he was born dancing. At 10, he was already obsessed with street dance, mimicking moves he saw on television. When he discovered hip-hop, it was as if he had found a language that finally spoke for him. He didn't just move to the rhythm, he became it. By 13, he auditioned for Untamed and passed. Imagine that, a boy barely a teenager, leaving home to chase a dream in a country where he didn't even fully speak the language yet. Korea was cold, the training system colder. Every day started before sunrise. Hours of dance drills, vocal warm-ups, fitness sessions, language lessons, and behind it all, a silent competition. If you weren't good enough, you were gone. There's a story trainees whisper about Yibo, how one night after failing a routine, he stayed behind, looping the same dance track over and over until the janitor asked him to leave. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He just tightened his shoelaces, turned the volume back up, and said, "Again." And then came his debut, UNIQ, 2014. He was only 17. The world finally got a glimpse of the boy who had trained half his childhood away. The lights, the cameras, the cheers, they were everything he had dreamed of. But fame is never as simple as it looks. Promotions faltered. Global tensions cut short their activities. And just like that, the spotlight dimmed. But Wang Yibo refused to fade. He turned every setback into a stepping stone. If the stage was closed, he'd build another one. He battled in dance competitions, learned motorcycling, took acting classes. It wasn't about being famous anymore. It was about being free. That's the beauty of Yibo's story. While others waited for opportunities, he created his own. Two different souls. Two different beginnings. Yet both walked through storms before the world saw their light. Imagine Xiao Zhan, quiet, kind, sketching his dreams in pencil, and Yibo, wild, relentless, sketching his in motion. They didn't know it yet, but their paths were destined to collide in a story that would define a generation. It's almost poetic, one shaped by gentleness, the other by grit. Both fighting invisible battles no one saw. Both holding on when it would have been easier to let go. There's a scene you can almost picture. Two rising stars standing on different sides of the same sky. One staring out from his design studio, wondering if he'll ever make it. The other dancing in a dark practice room, wondering if it's all worth it. Both unaware that destiny was quietly aligning them for something extraordinary. And that, right there, is the essence of Before the Fame. Every applause you hear now, every billboard, every fan chant, was once silence filled with fear and sweat and unrelenting effort. Because before every star is born, there's darkness. And it's in that darkness that they learn to shine. Outro, YouTube call to action. If this part of Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's journey moved you, if it made you see the heart behind the fame, then stick around. Because the next chapter takes us into the moment destiny brought them together and how the Untamed changed everything. Don't forget to like, share, and comment your favorite moment from their early days. Tell us which story inspired you more. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next breathtaking part of their story. Until then, remember, every legend starts with a dream. And sometimes, the dreamers who dare the most are the ones who shine the brightest.